we take different chemicals out of plants and create medications that way. But there's a balance in plants, a natural wisdom that I think we have lost. I think we've gained so much in Western medicine, but I think we've also lost something.
Welcome to Uprising. Each episode looks inside what it takes to lead the most dynamic and successful cultural movements. Some of them in the business world, some in the social realm, some in politics, and some in between, to see why people start uprisings. What gives those initiatives momentum and keeps them going? And most important, what lessons can you learn from these movements and how to apply them to your business and even personal life? Let's explore the secret to sparking movements that move people into action.
Passionate ideas.
Controversial ideas.
Uprising ideas.
The power is now in the hands of anyone.
To start a cultural movement.
Today's Uprising Pod is brought to you by warbyparker.com. Get a free 5-day home try-on at www.warbyparkertrial.com/uprising. 5 pairs, 5 days, 100% free.
We are on the Uprising Pod. Today we have Dahlia Mertens, who's the founder of Mary Jane's Medicinals, on the show, and we're talking about marijuana. We're talking about medicinal marijuana, really innovative ways of using marijuana on your skin topically. We're also talking about it in a bigger context. You know, in today's world, there are some places in the world, like Colorado, like Amsterdam, Washington, not the capital, but although they probably would benefit from it, where you can smoke and eat it and vape it and use topicals and other options.
Rub it on your body.
Rub it on your body, hopefully with another person would be probably more fun. And this is a movement that obviously is going to grow. The medicines we're taking are full of chemicals and toxins and God knows what's in them. And then we have this organic, I guess it can be organic, let's say natural, plant that does provide some relief. And this is a movement that's going to grow and become something, I suppose, over the next few years, it's just going to be normal. In our society today, so many people are on these anxiety medications. You know, we're living in a stressful environment. Urban life is stressful. You know, I was reading an article the other day about how many people are on Xanax. And obviously the previous generation were on other types of calming drugs, like
right.
Valium and so forth. In your experience, how many people do you think could be helped to live a more fulfilling life with medicinal marijuana versus, like you say, these other drugs?
Well, you know, I'm not a doctor, but I feel like people that feel the need to use these other drugs to calm down should try marijuana, should try cannabis. Cannabis doesn't have the side effects that most of our other pharmaceuticals have, and it's just such a safer alternative to so many other medications out there. It's really non-toxic. You physically can't overdose on cannabis, whereas, you know, alcohol, that's fairly easy to do, and so many of these other prescription drugs, it's quite easy to do. So I feel like if this alternative, the cannabis alternative, was available to more people, that, you know, we've already seen it in these states that have legalized medical marijuana, that the prescription drug deaths go down. I think it's like 25%, I think is the stat I read recently.
It's amazing. So let's break it down. I mean, there's marijuana. It has has a very negative connotation, and it's increasingly getting a more positive reputation. But let's break it down. What do your products actually do?
I make cannabis-infused topical products. So I make a pain relief salve, a body lotion, a massage oil, a lip balm, a bath soak, and a muscle liniment. So all my products are topical, and when you use cannabis topically, the THC doesn't actually enter into the bloodstream. It just interacts with the peripheral nervous system. So you get medicinal aspects of the plant without experiencing psychoactive effects. And cannabis used topically has just a myriad of medicinal applications. We all have a system in our body called the endocannabinoid system, and this system is about balance and homeostasis, and it's comprised of chemicals called endocannabinoids that our bodies naturally produce, and it's also comprised of receptors that interact with these chemicals, the endocannabinoids. The cannabis plant makes phytocannabinoids, which are very chemically similar to endocannabinoids. So when our body's out of balance, our bodies will create more of these endocannabinoids, which will bind to these receptors and promote the healing process and homeostasis. So when you use a topical, just say you have an arthritic knee and you rub the salve directly on that knee, the phytocannabinoids from the cannabis plant will actually bind to those receptors in the layers of your skin and help with anti-inflammatory, it'll have analgesic effects, and it'll just help the healing process and getting your body back to balance in general. So because the phytocannabinoids help your body's own healing and homeostasis response, these products actually work for so many different conditions across the board. It's not just one or two things. It promotes the body's healing response, so it helps for so many different things. Burns, as I said, arthritis, general aches and pains, skin conditions, migraines, cramps, neuropathy, all kinds of things. It's really exciting.
How did you get into it? I can see how, people get into recreational marijuana, but how did you get into what you've just described and thinking of the product being used in that way?
So I've always been into kind of natural healing and herbal medicine, and I was a massage therapist, and I was asked to go out to California to help trim weed on my friend's medical farm. And when I was out there, I got to see the plants growing outside for the first time in my life, and it was really awe-inspiring. I was kind of struck by the beauty and power of these plants, and I started really respecting the cannabis plant more at that time. There was a girlfriend of mine at the camp that had infused some grapeseed oil, and she asked if she could rub it on my neck. And I had never heard of cannabis used topically, but I'm not going to say no to a neck massage. So she rubs it on my neck, and right away I feel my muscles relax. I feel an increase of circulation, and that got the wheels spinning in my head. I was still living in Colorado at the time, and it was right when the medical marijuana movement was really starting to gain momentum here in Colorado. So when I got back to Colorado after my 6 weeks or so in Northern California, I just started mixing this stuff up in my kitchen and using it on my clients. And at first I thought it was just going to make for a more relaxing massage. But then my clients kept coming back to me with chronic issues going away, chronic hip pain that they had had since childbirth, or circulation issues that they had had for years, neuropathy, nerve damage, all kinds of stuff. And I didn't know how or why it was working, but I knew that it was. And I got very excited about the potential for this product at that time.
What's interesting is obviously it's an area that's been a taboo for so long. Obviously, centuries ago, marijuana was used much more and hemp was used much more in society. And then at some point, it was demonized and kind of shelved and, out of touch with society. And anyone who touched it was, slapped on the hand or thrown in jail. So now that it's come back, full circle, it seems as though people are starting to innovate and find uses for it that probably, 300 years, 400 years ago were common.
Even just 100 years ago, up until about the 1920s, it was pretty much the most common medication that doctors prescribed. And then it was demonized and illegalized, and there was all kinds of propaganda spread about it. I even believed that it was a dangerous drug up until my early 30s.
I used to have those blacklight posters in my room. It was like marijuana rots your mind, and then I had homework rots your mind, and I wasn't sure which one was true. So, but is medicinal marijuana just a nice legal term for? Let's just be. Come on, let's be realistic. It's marijuana. What's the big deal? Let's just, whether it's medicinal or recreational. Come on, let's just open it up and make it a business and regulate it. Doesn't that sound like a smarter idea?
It's a plant. It's so good for everything. Medical marijuana is no different than recreational marijuana. I think that's just a way maybe for us to get people to accept it more, introduce it on the medical arena first and show people that it can be purely medicinal.
The devil doesn't come and burn you up on the spot. Life will go on.
Yeah, exactly.
For you, the listeners of Scott Goodson's Uprising Pod, Warby Parker is offering a free 5-day home try-on to give you the opportunity to check out their glasses. To get your home try-on today, go to warbyparkertrial.com/uprising. Again, that's warbyparkertrial.com/uprising for your free 5-day home try-on.
So being one of the leaders in this field, Dahlia, do you feel that there's still a lot of skepticism, or do you think that among the younger generation that they're there with you?
In the younger generation?
Yeah, like millennials, people of this generation, not youth, but people over the age of 21, of course. Do you think that they're more in line with you versus, let's say, people who were born in the 1960s, born in the 1970s?
I would say so. I think each generation gets a little bit more open-minded about this. The propaganda was super heavy through the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And then, as the hippie generation embraced this plant a little bit more, there was more acceptance, but still on the conservative side, there was a lot of negativity towards this plant. I feel like as we get further away from the war on drugs, it was, really a political agenda thing that cannabis was illegalized. As we get further away from that, I feel like accurate information is more available now to people. So yeah, I think the younger generations are seeing, instead of getting inundated by propaganda, they have access to real information. So people's minds are getting opened about this, especially the younger generations.
Are there bigger businesses that are behind this medicinal movement that help to substantiate this as a true shift that's going to happen, or is it still very much mom and pop shops?
Well, now that big money is seeing that this is going to be big business, most likely, there's definitely more money coming into this arena. I see, I've been in it since 2009, and it was really just mom and pop shops for the first several years. But now there's more investment firms and private equity firms that want to get into this because they see the potential. So there's definitely more money coming into the cannabis industry now. And I think big corporations coming into this field is inevitable. I haven't seen, any massive corporations get into the field yet because there's still risk involved, and I think smaller operations are less risk averse than huge corporations. But yeah, I think it's inevitable that big business is going to get into the arena.
How did the medicinal marijuana movement benefit your business?
Well, my business wouldn't be possible if there had been no medical marijuana movement. I didn't get into the cannabis realm until it was legal. I was never on the black market. So I would have never started creating these products unless the laws had changed.
How can people who are interested in knowing more about medicinal marijuana but just don't know how to, go about it, how can they find out accurate information and also be inspired by the different uses that you talked about earlier?
I think, going online and Googling it, there's a lot of different online education sources now that I think are doing a good job with putting out accurate, honest information. I just partook in an online seminar last weekend called the Cannabis Health Summit. They're going to air that this weekend, and I think they got together about 20 industry experts to speak on panels and different subjects about cannabis, used medically and recreationally, and the business aspects of it as well. So I think that would be a good source, the Cannabis Health Summit. People can Google that, or they can just get online and Google medical marijuana and cannabis and topicals and edibles and juicing raw cannabis. I think that's a really exciting thing too. I've read a lot of amazing stories about that.
What is juicing raw cannabis?
So you can take cannabis leaves and run it through a juicer and drink it, and it has an incredible amount of antioxidants. It also has all of those phytocannabinoids in there. And when the cannabis plant is in its fresh form before it's dried and smoked, the THC in the plant is actually in the form of THCA, which is non-psychoactive. So you can juice raw cannabis and ingest it, and just get the health benefits as well without getting high.
Do you think the movement for, let's say, healthier, more organic brands like, the Burt's Bees of the world and, the Honest Teas and those sorts of brands, do you think that they almost help spread let's say, the curiosity about what medicinal marijuana could represent? Or are they really just a statement of where people are in America, in the sense that they are seeking or curious about alternatives to the established, corporate brands?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I think we're getting more open to herbal alternatives, and our mindsets have changed that maybe Western medicine isn't always the way to go. So I think those kind of brands have helped open people's eyes up to different alternatives and more natural alternatives. So that maybe did help the cannabis movement.
Because when you see Bert, you think he should have been in the medicinal marijuana business. I don't know if he says that sort of deal. So do you feel like the movement has a lot more legs? Like, where do you see yourself going in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel the momentum has increased a lot in the last 6-7 years since I've been in the industry. Well, there's a lot more information out there. Studies are coming out. Sanjay Gupta jumped on board. So there's a lot more mainstream acceptance of the plant now, and that enables us to have more momentum and grow as an industry.
Do you think that as more and more places put marijuana online, not online in terms of being on the internet, but it comes online in the sense that it becomes legalized or decriminalized, do you think that movement is stoppable or unstoppable now?
I think it's unstoppable. And I'm an optimist, but I can't see the federal government and states. I can't really speak for Canada, but it sounds like Canada has even more of an open mind towards cannabis. In the States, there's so many people that are getting so many health benefits from this plant now. Also in Colorado, the tax revenue that we've seen is huge, and that's going towards schools and bettering our state. So as we see more information come out and how the tax revenue is so helpful, and that, as I said before, like violent crimes and prescription drug deaths have gone down, and people have this great alternative that's very effective and gentle and non-toxic. Like, how can we take that away from the people? More people need to have access to it. The more people that have access to it, the better everything's going to be, in my opinion. And I can't see us turning around at this point and going back.
And what did your parents say when you said to them you were going to get into this business?
That's a good question. I was a little hesitant to tell them. But my parents actually are pretty open-minded. They don't smoke pot. They don't intoxicate themselves really in any way. But they are open-minded to herbal medicine. So when I called them up, I said, well, I'm thinking about starting this line, and I'm going to make cannabis-infused massage oil. And surprisingly, they were really open to it right away. And I explained to them that it was non-psychoactive, and it was just, utilizing the medicinal aspects of the plant. And then I showed them the products, and they started trying it and seeing the benefits for themselves. So they were actually very supportive from the beginning, which was a blessing for me.
The way you talk about the medicinals, it reminds me, as a child, I grew up in Montreal, Canada, and across the St. Lawrence was the community of Caughnawaga, which today is called Kanesatake, depending on how you think about it, which is the Iroquois Nation Reserve. And at the time, there was the chief of that community, very well-known man named Chief Pokenfire, very respected. He was a very good friend of my dad's, and my dad would go over there and we would have chats with him. He was really a worldly man, had traveled the world, and his house was filled with vials. If you can imagine a wall of a house that had little shelves, and on each of the shelves would be a glass vial, and in that vial was a plant that was dried from the forest, and he had thousands of these bottles, and people would write him from all over the globe telling him about their illnesses, and he would send them medicinal medicine through the mail. It was literally the world's first, direct mail medicinal program, which was, mushrooms and plants and trees. And all of that's gone. The learning of those generations, what they knew about the natural world. And today, that whole culture, that whole world is gone. And one of the things I just feel when I hear you speak is like you're bringing back a little bit of that, which to me feels really exciting.
Yeah, I think there was so much wisdom in the past when we had to rely on plants as our medications. And now, in our modern world, we take different chemicals out of plants and create medications that way. But there's a balance in plants, a natural wisdom that I think we have lost. I think we've gained so much in Western medicine, but I think we've also lost something. And I think the cannabis plant has so much wisdom in the plant itself. And if we can bring back that whole plant medicine a little bit, I think that's a really exciting thing.
Well, this has been a fascinating discussion. I've learned a lot myself. I think the idea of putting medicinal marijuana into salves and into tubes and using it as a way of relieving pain and solving other types of ailments like burns, as you suggested, it's just something I'd never thought about. And it's very interesting. And you've got a new member of your movement. I'm very interested to learn more. Fascinating. So, Dahlia, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been very interesting. If people want to know more about you and about your Mary Jane's Medicinals, where can they find that information?
So my website is maryjanesmedicinals.com. There's more information on the site about our products. There's also links to different articles. And I think, just to add one more thing, I think topicals are really exciting because they can be an ambassador for this plant. People as a whole, we've been subjected to so much propaganda over the years that it takes a little work to open people's minds back up to this plant again. And since the topicals are purely medicinal and you're not experiencing the psychoactive effects, pretty much anybody can use a topical. So I feel like this form of the plant can really help open people's minds up again towards this really medicinal, amazing plant that, as I said, everybody should have access to.
And I, for one, totally agree. So, so thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure for you to be on the Uprising podcast, and have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you so much, Scott. I really enjoyed this, and thanks for helping get the word out.
Absolutely. Keep on trucking.
All right, I sure will.
Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining our Uprising today and listening to our show. If you missed the show, or if you want to find out more about who was on, or if you want to learn more about how to create your own Uprising, please go to uprisingmovements.com. You can also download this Uprising program from iTunes. Uprising was produced by Nicola Keneally and Adam Helen, with special help from Melanie Boardman, Karin Drachenberg, Philippa Freeman, Brianna Campbell, Fashad Faroudi, Mark Bruzy, Will Issam, James Politi, and Jonathan Weeks. My name is Scott Goodson, and you've been listening to Uprising. What we can learn about movements and uprisings that are shaping our world in business, in society, and in between. For more on cultural movements and movement marketing, be sure to pick up a copy of the best-selling book Uprising, How to Build a Brand and Change the World by Sparking Cultural Movements, available on Amazon.com. Music for Uprising composed by Charles Duchateau.